Marie-Claude is Senior Technical Manager at the Global Food Safety Initiative, actively putting her 20 years of experience as food safety professional at the service of the GFSI vision of safe food for consumers everywhere. In her role at GFSI, she pairs her extensive technical expertise with strategic thinking and relationship building, spearheading innovative projects, managing various multi-stakeholder working groups, and fostering relationships with the ever-growing GFSI community, which spans industry, academia, government, and key standards organizations such as ISO, EIF, and certification programs owners. In parallel, Marie-Claude works tirelessly to safeguard and grow trust throughout the food supply chain, continuously reviewing the globally recognized GFSI benchmarks requirements while ensuring consistency and alignment in food safety certification process. Prior to joining GFSI, Marie-Claude worked with various food categories within food retail and manufacturing, where she applied her skills in continuous improvement, quality systems, and team management. She also developed a significant international profile, working across Europe as well as in many Asian countries to improve supply chain food safety systems. She holds degrees in agronomy, auditing, and food research. Hello, Marie-Claire. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming here and answer questions that I'm doing to you in name of other food safety professionals that could not attend GFSI conference and now are looking for news about the new benchmark requirements. Okay, I will start by my first question would be regarding scopes. Okay, one of the key changes for the 2020 version is the alignment of the scope structure with ISO 22000 and the adding of new scopes. Okay, could you explain to me the reasons of these changes?
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's a pleasure. So first of all, on the alignment of GFSI scopes definitions to the ISO 22000 definition, it is one of our strategic aspects when we write the benchmarking requirements to align to internationally recognized standards. This is about speaking a common international language in food safety, and ISO is definitely an internationally recognized source of standards. They had a slightly different structure to their scopes than ours, and so version 2020 was the opportunity to align the slight differences between their scopes and ours. So we aligned to theirs. It hasn't had a major impact on scope definitions themselves, but it had an impact on the name. So all the letters have changed. So for example, the scope called E have changed to C. So although it may look like a big change to people who are used to version 7 of the benchmarking requirement, in the details, there's not a lot of differences. The second question you ask is about the addition of the new scopes.
Yes.
Retail, catering, and hygienic design. So through the benchmarking requirements, we try and cover the entire food supply chain from farm to store, and to cover any activities that may have an impact on food safety. We do that to serve our members and people who use the GFSI recognition as one of their risk assessment tool for their supplier base and their own site, so that people can say, well, if I want to buy food, I can buy it from GFSI recognized, from sites that are GFSI certified, or if I want to buy services such as laundry or pest control, hopefully very soon we will have a GFSI recognition for those services too, so people will be able to say, well, we want to work with service providers who have a certificate from one of the GFSI recognized programs for that scope. This is why we continue to extend our scopes. I believe now with version 2020, we have the entire food supply chain covered.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but my second, you start, because my second question will be precisely about this new, that I believe is still under development, the provision of food safety service, right? It's still under development, but the idea, you start already talking about it, but perhaps you can develop a little bit more. What can we expect with this full scope when full development? Is just for guarantee that everybody is inside the GFSI recognition?
Yes, exactly. It's that idea that everybody, the whole supply chain, food supply chain, and associated services can have access to certification from GFSI recognized programs. And service provision was the last gap. And so we are addressing it. The scope should be ready next year. It will cover services that have an impact on food safety, so laundry, pest control, cleaning and hygiene services as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, as a food manufacturing site, you can select suppliers that have certification from GFSI recognized program for your ingredients, for your packaging, and for your services as well.
Yes. Awesome. So really, really excited to see that develop. Okay, my next question, Marie, will be about another change that certainly will impact the daily work of organizations certified under GFSI, because there was a change in unannounced audits from preferred to mandatory. Okay, I would like to know your opinion in two different ways, two different questions. First, was defined a different minimum number of unannounced audits for farming related scopes. Okay, in my interpretation, these scopes will not be they will not be always they will not have always unannounced audits, okay, because they can be only 10% of the audits will be mandatory unannounced, right?
Correct. So you're correct in saying that the approach, depending on the scopes, is slightly different for unannounced audit. All of the scopes, apart from two, have a mandatory unannounced audit requirements, which shows a slightly different approach for primary production to the other scopes, simply because of the nature of primary production. It's seasonal, it's more difficult to plan than in manufacturing. And we also recognize that it's often much smaller organizations. So although the ambition is to increase the number of unannounced audits throughout the supply chain, we also are pragmatic and are, facing the reality of primary production development compared to some manufacturing sectors.
So it's just a question because they are usually smaller farms and not so easy to control it and do unannounced audits.
Correct, but also because when you're on a farm, your produce grow as fast as the weather allows. So it's very hard to plan when you're going to do your harvest to the day. And so there's a lot of interactions close to the date of the audit between the CB and the farmer traditionally, so that the auditor comes when there's harvest happening. So it's more difficult in those circumstances to plan unannounced audits, because you can't say, I'm not telling you I'm coming, but are you going to harvest in the next few days? It's like telling the sites they're going to have their audit anyway.
Sure, I understand. Okay, it's great. So another interesting or important question for the food safety professionals is when the timing of this new change, because when will the certification programs owners will include in their certification program this new mandatory unannounced audits? In other words, when can certified organizations expect this new mandatory unannounced audits to become enforced, and they will all must comply with that?
Yeah, this is a very important question. If you're a certified site, you want to know if your next audit is going to be unannounced or it will be the following one. Understand? So it will be over the next 18 months. So some programs have already implemented the unannounced audits in preparation to their next assessment with GFSI. But all currently recognized programs have 9 months to change their program and apply for reassessment by GFSI to be recognized against version 2020. So over the next 9 months, every program, one after the other, will announce to the certified sites the changes, including when they can expect their next unannounced audits. And as I mentioned, some of them already have done the changes, so some of those unannounced audit will be this year.
Yes, sure. For FSSC, for sure. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
so now it's expected that until the end of this year, we all the certification program owners will have to add that unannounced mandatory audits in their
Correct.
yes, and then they will explain certification organization how they will face, but perhaps next year will be most of them will be already in working with
Yeah, I
yes.
think that all the programs will change this year to prepare for their GFSI assessment, and therefore by the end of the year all the program will have changed. All the sites will be told you now need to transition. My recommendation would be to keep an eye on the newsletters of the programs to see when they're issuing the next standard version. The programs are always required to give a very clear transition guidelines when there's a change to their rules. So they will be telling the CBs, who will in turn tell the sites, this is what's happening. I'd also recommend that sites keep an eye on the GFSI news in terms of what program is being recognized, because when a program is recognized, it means that they comply, so that the rules are implemented now.
Okay, awesome. So the new requirements also introduce food safety culture elements as an evidence of senior management commitment. In the requirements are included 4 examples of what should be at the minimum those elements of food culture. But before, I would like to ask you and try to get from you and from your past experience in the industry, because we all know how challenging it is to evidence culture related issues. Okay, and I was challenging you to see if you can share with us what some examples of what's in your opinion concrete examples of how food safety culture can be evidenced.
Yeah, it's a very good question actually, and the best examples of a good culture of food safety I've seen in sites I've audited in my career have been when the audit was not only supported by the technical or quality manager on the site, but was supported by everybody in the organization I was visiting. And everybody I would talk to would have an understanding of how their role impact food safety. So the best examples are when the quality manager or the technical manager are just here to coordinate the audit, but they are different managers and different employees of the organization who provide the evidence to support the audit. I think this introduction to the benchmarking requirement will change how audits happen. It's very difficult to measure culture, and so you can't just base it on paperwork. You also have to base it on what people tell you and how they give you the evidence. And one of the key factor for me is having witness statement and inputs from more than one person, so from different people in the organization at every level. That's how you know that a site has the right culture. The elements that we've put in the requirements, they are linked to the GFSI documents, food safety culture. Now, culture is very specific to an organization. It's also specific to individuals. But that document actually helps organization to understand how they can demonstrate that they have the right culture around food safety without compromising their own culture, their own business culture, really.
Okay, that's culture. Food safety culture is always something that's not so intangible. Yes, not easy to. It's only possible to understand if you go there and experience it. Yes.
Yes, but they are. I mean, other organizations have started. Other industries have actually started measuring culture. So, for example, in security. So nothing to do with food safety, but around product security or business security. There are elements of the audit protocols to measure the culture. And in aviation as well, they've done some work. So because GFSI, we work with these industries through the International Accreditation Forum, I'm able to talk to these people about how they measured it. And it's about really spending time with employees at different levels of the organization to gauge if they feel comfortable talking about food safety, raising concerns that they may have, and that the organization will take those concerns seriously and not punish them for doing the right thing. So this is what we're looking at, and this is also what we hope the programs will in turn look at with their auditors. It is very difficult to measure culture objectively.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So in several of the requirements for the content of standards, it seems like it is reinforced that the assurance the organization must provide. I noticed that in training, housekeeping, cleaning and disinfection, and pest control, the word procedure was introduced. It's now, and my question will be this one, it's now expected that organizations have a higher level of planning and control over these prerequisites.
Yes, and that's a consequence as well of what Codex Alimentarius has done with their food safety guidelines and what is happening on the legislation side in the US and other parts of the world, where there is a great emphasis on prerequisites. I also wanted to say, so not only are we using the word procedure more, but we're also saying that these procedures must be established, implemented, and maintained every time. So it's one step to write the procedure, but it's just as important to make sure that it's correctly implemented on site and throughout the organization, and it's maintained and kept up to date. If the environment or the organization itself changed, the procedures needs to be reviewed so that they are still relevant. So that was an important aspect for us. So version 2020 is emphasize the importance of writing the procedure, implementing it, and making sure it's always relevant.
Right, that's like a PDCA cycle.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so always continuous improving. Yes,
exactly.
Sure. So, Marie, I will finish now the interview, this small interview, with my last question. And this will be a little bit about the audits and auditors. Because I did an interview with Corneli and Aldin from FSSA for my last ebook, and we discussed the problem of lack of habilitated auditors to perform GFSI recognized program audits. Okay. Do you share the opinion that this is a challenge for the next years, and how GFSI is looking to this specifically? And now, as we are facing a pandemic situation, maybe this will be even more urgent, since some audits will be delayed and they will create more pressure even to do audits in less time. Okay, so how do you look at this? How do GFSI is working to solve this, if you believe this is a problem, of course?
Yeah, the first question is, do we believe it is a problem? We certainly hear from all our important stakeholders that auditor availability is becoming an issue, or will become an issue very soon. So the certification program owners tell us, the certification bodies tell us, even some of the auditors who we are in contact with tell us. Being an auditor is a really difficult job, because there's a lot of pressure on you from the sites, often whose business depend on that certification. And it's also very difficult because you have to travel a lot. You're independent and you're on your own on the road. So a lot of important decisions depend on you. And we require people to be experienced to become auditors. So to become an auditor is difficult, and to remain an auditor is difficult. What this seems to have led to is an aging of the auditor population. So people who've become auditors many years ago continuing to audit, but less and less people are becoming auditors. That's certainly what is being described to us by our stakeholders. So when we've been discussing this issue internally with our board of members in GFSI, we were keen to try and help, but in a way that was in line with what GFSI is good at, really. So we're a benchmarking organization. We don't do training. We don't do standards. So it was inappropriate for us to start looking at maybe developing training for auditors or continuing to increase requirements on auditor training and competency. And the approach that we took eventually and decided upon in Seattle, in fact, with our board of members, is part of our plan for the race to the top. Mm-hmm. I believe, Erica, gave you the highlight of that plan. An element of it is the creation of benchmarking requirements for auditor training and continuous professional development. So what we are aiming at with this is develop a general recognition of auditor training programs that would hopefully reduce the burden on auditors, on people who want to become auditors, to move from a model where an auditor may have to go through 3 or 4 different set of trainings from different certification programs to one where they have a GFSI recognized training that is actually accepted by the GFSI recognized program. So that's what we're working on, and that's the vision. Okay. We also wanted to ensure that auditors are invested in and are part of a formal and recognized continuous professional development. So once you've become an auditor, it's important that you maintain and update your knowledge. And the auditors need to be helped to do this by the CB and the CPO. I also think that it's important when you are a professional that your employer or your contract or the person you have a contract with invest in you as an individual to maintain and develop, really. So that's also why we will have also requirements around continuous professional development. Mm-hmm. These 2 elements combined, who are part of the race to the top strategy, hopefully will make the profession of auditor more attractive so that people are keen to stay and remain auditors, but also to become auditors. Mm-hmm. That's how we are planning to try and help that issue.
Great. Okay, Marie-Claude, thank you for your insights. It's really interesting to know that we are trying to do steps to minimize this issue. And again, thank you for the time you take to reply my questions and reply to some of the doubts, I hope, of other food safety professionals all over the world. Okay. So again, thank you and for your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nuno.
You are welcome. Bye-bye.